Welcome back. Join me here again in the Quaker Room here at the Warden Memorial Library at Berkeley College. In our last video, we looked at step 1, become a friend to someone totally different from yourself in politics, race, creed, and class. But now we're moving on to step 2. We want to seek to understand with compassion and care. Really, this is a natural progression from step 1, where we become a friend to someone totally different from ourselves. Often it is easier to take a step away when we become a bit uncomfortable. We become afraid of people we do not understand. So step 2 is digging into deeper and truly caring with compassion for those we do not understand. One such example can be found once again in the relationship of our historical friend Laura Haviland with Willis and Elsie Hamilton. Following the erysipelas plague of 1845, the Hamiltons returned to support the Haviland family. Willis came to repay the kindness that Laura and Charles had given to his family. The Hamiltons had decided to stay in the United States rather than fleeing to Canada because their 2 little girls were still caught in slavery in Tennessee by Elsie's slaveholders, Tom and his father, John Chester. Willis had received his free papers from Deacon Bayless, a fine Christian man who had provided cover for Elsie when the Chesters had planned to sell her down the river away from her family. The Hamiltons tried, but to no avail, could rescue and escape with their 2 small girls. Broken-hearted, their hearts longed to hear something about the well-being of these little girls. Willis immediately asked Laura if she would help write a letter to their friend Deacon Bayless. "No way," Laura exclaimed. "It would be a trap." Out of desperation, the Hamiltons turned to another friend to write that letter on their behalf. Meanwhile, Laura had a very specific dream one night of 3 poisonous green viper snakes popping out near a fire, hissing and threatening her. And after telling Elsie of her dream, Elsie forced Willis to tell Laura the truth about a letter that had arrived from the good deacon. He had news about the 2 girls, but unfortunately, the sad news was Deacon Bayless was desperately ill. He, along with Dr. Taylor, asked to meet with Willis and Elsie at a hotel in Toledo, Ohio. There they could share the news regarding the girls with them. Begging Laura to respond to the deacon's letter, she continued to refuse. Laura never trusted a postmark from the slave state of Tennessee and told Willis so. Laura felt very grave about their imminent danger, but chose to remain calm. Several days later, a stranger appeared in the area, searching for slaves, and then 3 days later, this note came for Willis from Deacon Bayless, saying his death could be soon, and that he would have every train watched for the Hamiltons' arrival in Toledo. Sharing it with Laura, she exclaimed this, "I smell a rat." Willis was determined to make the trip to Toledo, while Laura and a neighbor persuaded him to stay home. In the middle of these concerns, a scheme was born, and all the parties agreed to it. Laura and her son Daniel would go instead, along with another young black man who fit the description of Willis as a decoy. Taking the train from Adrian to Toledo, the travel was filled with high drama and danger. Laura went into the Toledo hotel to share her message with the dying deacon and skillfully interact in a drama that she would retell hundreds of times in what turned out to be a comedy of errors. Proceeding with the dying deacon's narrative, she played the role of a nurse who had come in place of the Hamiltons to attend to his physical needs. Taking the man's pulse, who did not fit the description Willis had given for the deacon, she found her suspicions to be true. This was the moment that she realized she was alone at the midnight hour within the enemy's camp, face to face with human traffickers. Laura cried out to God for wisdom. Quick thinking, she agreed to send a telegram to the Hamiltons, asking them to come right away to Toledo to fulfill the wish of their dying deacon friend. After writing their request, she added a few lines to help provide adequate clothing for Elsie, which Elsie would know immediately was completely inadequate. Thankfully, the slaveholders fell for this little ploy, and they freed her. They sent the telegram by courier rider, and they set her free. Early the next morning, Laura boarded the train from Toledo back to Adrian, Michigan, only to find the 3 slaveholders trying to board the train as well. Barely avoiding a direct confrontation, the train left the depot only to be stopped 10 miles down the road at Sylvania, when the 3 slaveholders climbed on the train and held Haviland at gunpoint. John Chester drew his revolver from his pocket, with his son doing the same, and he roared out, "We will be here for 3 weeks, and before we leave, we will have our property that you have in your possession," along with several expletives, of course. In a quiet, calm resolve that Laura didn't understand herself, she replied, "Man, I fear neither thy weapons nor thy threats. They are powerless. And as for thy property, I have none of it about me or on my premises." Just then, the conductor on the train appeared and saved the day by scaring them off the train, calling for the lawman. The 3 Southerners fled the train, disappearing into the thickets, hissing and threatening, just like those 3 poisonous green viper snakes in her dream. Wow, what a dramatic story. By facing down those dangerous slaveholders, Laura shared great compassion and care for the Hamilton family. She expended great energy to protect these dear ones in her care. There are many safe and simple ways to show care and concern without placing anyone in danger, though it is true that developing relationships and caring for others can always be a risk. There is nothing greater than caring and making a difference in someone's life. I had this type of relationship with my friend Donna. Donna was a neighbor that attended the church I served, and I enjoyed visiting with Donna. She had such a zest for life, unless she was under the influence of alcohol. She went through rehab several times, and it was always her desire to stay sober. Donna had been a slave to the demon of alcohol for several decades of her life. Her health soon spiraled out of control. And whether I was visiting her in the hospital or in jail, Donna was always kind and appreciative. Donna accepted Christ at a woman's retreat, and it was such a joy for me to pray with her during this time. She loved her family deeply and asked me to pray that they too would come to know the Lord. Though several of us worked hard to help support her new walk with the Lord, her body was a victim to the many years of addiction. And unfortunately, Donna did not live too much longer after her decision for Christ. I can still see her smiling face, and I'm so thankful for the lessons I learned from Donna. She taught me that deep pain walks with many people in our world, and that if we will reach out with a hand of friendship, we can bring hope and joy into their lives. Do we truly show compassion and care? If not, we are the ones missing out on the joy and beauty caring for another one can bring. How can you take a risk to show compassion and care for someone? Can you stir up some good trouble this week by reaching out to someone in need? This is your homework assignment. I would love to hear comments from you, either here or on my website at www.undergroundangel.net. So, step 1 in finding good trouble is becoming a friend to someone totally different from yourself. Step 2 is to seek to understand with compassion and care. See you in the next video where I will share step 3. Bye for now.